Hello everyone, we are the Lords of the Sith, and today we're going to talk about the evidence why Reylo is Endgame. Not only Endgame, it's the core of the sequel trilogy. We've already spoken about The Force Awakens and the beginning, and today we're going to focus on The Last Jedi, the marketing for The Last Jedi, and its aftermath. My name is Denise and I'm here with Lee.
I want to just talk about the trailer because I remember how amazing that day was. We all suspected that there was going to be something Reylo in the trailer, but I don't think any of us were like actually expecting that it would be that Reylo forward, you know, that bold. Oh my God, like that moment when he extended his hand to her and his face, you know, the vulnerability, the hope. And it's just like everybody's holding their breath, like what's gonna happen? Oh my God. We did a really good analysis of the trailer, to be fair, but my favorite thing was just gushing about the trailer and the Reylo-ness of it. Sometimes I rewatch that episode just because it's so much fun. But yeah, I would say that was definitely the beginning of the pre-TLJ marketing, kind of ramping up the expectations for The Last Jedi.
And then we also had later some tweets by Rian, like Rey and Kylo are two halves of a protagonist, and then there was the marketing, there was a lot of Rey and Kylo put together. What else do you remember?
Well, I remember that these interviews came out and they kept talking about how significant the connection between them was and how it was going to be explored, and Daisy Ridley saying that she was worried about how some people were going to perceive her character because of things that developed. So everything was hinting in a Reylo direction. We had the Reylo dolls coming out. And I love that, Denise, because I remember that you said when we were looking at the Reylo dolls, you're like, some people were saying that there's no way that they're going to have Reylo in a story for children. But honey, they're selling it to the children. Like, they were so marketing the Reylo for the kids. Then for the grown-ups, they had, you know, the Reylo perfume, his and hers, which of course is a very kind of erotic and romantic thing that we see in marketing for perfumes for women and men, for couples, not brothers and sisters. Hello. And then of course we had also the Reylo train, a legit Reylo train. I mean, we had the interviews in Japan where somebody was saying, I think it was Rian Johnson was saying that these two characters were going to have a moment of communion, you know, and we were like, what does that mean?
And I think there was something, I don't remember from where, that they resonate together.
Yes.
But I just want to go back a little bit because I just have an interview from JJ from November 2015 when he talks about the script for The Last Jedi. And what he says is that what Larry and I did was set up certain key relationships, certain key questions, conflicts. And we knew where certain things were going. We had meetings, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, the things that they had meetings and they were looking at things together, and that key relationships, these key things were kept. So I know some people might think, oh no, that was Rian Johnson, JJ is gonna change it, all that. And that's not true, because they had a straight collaboration. And according to JJ, the key relationships were kept, right? So it's a continuation of that as well.
It's where it comes into play, where you hear contradictory things all the time, because you hear Rian Johnson saying, I decided everything that was going to happen in episode 8. That's just not true. I mean, he couldn't have decided to kill Rey in episode 8. So he had obviously a lot of freedom to do things, right, with the approval of the big wigs, but there were elements there that were predetermined and he had to write the story around them. So I don't know. I think if he had absolutely hated Reylo, maybe he could have undone it, but maybe, I don't know. But the fact is that that storyline was already there and he just continued it. And he did a great job. As much as I've criticized The Last Jedi for multiple things, I think the key thing that he had to do was pass the baton as far as developing that relationship in a credible way. And I think he succeeded in that regard, because even people who had never crossed their minds to think of Reylo, I don't know how you could have watched The Force Awakens and never think of Reylo, but okay. People who'd never thought about it saw it and they were like, oh my God, this is awesome, you know? So he did a great job.
Yeah, he did. And I forgot where, I'm sorry, that he said that he watched The Force Awakens and he saw that interrogation scene and that dynamic and that he was interested in that. So when we talk about Reylo Johnson, it's actually that. It's just like us. He watched it and said, whoa, that's really interesting. How do I develop it? And it's funny because I know that lots of fan fictions had them, you know, having visions of each other, because I guess that's an easy and natural way to develop things. And it's funny that he went in that direction as well, right?
The Force Skype thing was brilliant. and his explanation for it made sense. Like, we needed them to be in the same space together without killing each other. We needed them to be able to talk. So it makes sense then that you have this open line of communication between them. But he did talk in his director's commentary about what his goals were as far as Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship. And obviously a lot went into creating this intimacy between them. You know, it wasn't by chance. It was something that they went great lengths to establish that in the scene itself, in the lighting, the sound, the proximity, the fact that even with the filming, like Adam Driver flew to Ireland to be off camera, just to be there physically for Daisy Ridley, to look into his eyes and kind of emote with him. So that says a lot. It was very important to create a credible intimacy between them. But his main goal was to make Kylo Ren go from somebody who is just a murderous snake to become actually somebody that she could have compassion for and that she could care about. Somebody that she could think, you know, I've got to save him. Kind of like Luke did for Darth Vader, but a lot more went into creating that between them because there's just more nuance and you're coming from extreme places, right? So it's just very carefully done. And I think if anybody who hasn't read the commentary, hasn't seen the commentary, and is still on the fence about Reylo, definitely just better to hear it straight from Rian. It's not by chance.
Yeah. And also I think the movie, it really does. You have Rey as this girl who wants the family, and he also wants to find this belonging, and she in a way finds it with Kylo. It's funny when she first meets Luke, and I think we can kind of believe Luke. What does he tell her? You need a teacher. And that's not me, you know. And that's exactly what Kylo had told her. And in fact, she has this thing that she's looking for. When she goes in that cave, who does she want to talk to? She wants to talk to Kylo. So they do create something that's meaningful for them throughout the movie, regardless of how it ends, right?
Yeah, and then of course you have the coded sexual elements in the scenes between them. That is really important because that's telling another story. Underneath the surface, under the dialogue, you have the fact that, you know, he appears shirtless for whatever reason. Somehow he happens to be shirtless in his quarters and she can't think because he's so hot. And then right after she gets an eyeful, she goes straight to the vagina cave, complete with pubic hair, and she dives right in there. So she goes straight to the darkness, the shameful place that Luke doesn't want her to go to. So she has got to explore that vagina cave. And there is Kylo Ren, you know, and there they have their intimate hand-touching sex moment that was so convincing to people that some people actually walked out of there thinking that she's going to have a baby because they touched hands. So they really did a great job. And again, the hushed intimacy between them, that is just really beautiful to see. The acting, I mean, it can't be overstated, I think, how delicate that scene is and how nice it is. Like the setup and the acting, the glances, breaths, you know, the hands, everything, just beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it's in a way, yes, it's sexual, but it's in a way, it's like children as well, right? Because children touch hands and they're like two kids, you know, learning about each other and about those feelings. I guess Kylo had never been so close to someone, maybe, you know, in terms of intimacy, you know? So I think that's really innocent and cute at the same time that it, you know, so it's beautiful in that way. That was really brilliant, you know. I don't think anyone can say that it wasn't.
That it wasn't, right. And then, of course, we have the fact that then she goes and ships herself to him by FedEx. And she does her hair, and she does her makeup. She buys a new outfit. She has her makeover. She shows up. Oh my God, her face when she sees him looking like a prince. Then, of course, they have that charged moment in the elevator. The way that he looks at her, the way they look at each other, the way she comes up in his space. Nice, very nice. And then, this is something actually that, and I'm sorry I can't like cite who it was exactly, but a viewer under Star Wars Connection sent us a message saying, hey, did you guys notice that when the elevator opens opens and Kylo grabs Rey by the arm and he takes her up to Snoke. The way that the camera frames them, it looks like a couple walking up to be married. It's like a couple walking down the aisle. So it's very interesting. And then, of course, you have the consummation of that marriage in the Praetorian Throwdown, where they're back to back, and there's a lot of interesting sexual imagery there as well. So it's just very nuanced, but also very in your face if you have eyes to see it.
Yeah, and it's also like in Rian Johnson's commentary, he says that he went there, decided to kill Snoke. That's something in Star Wars Connection we commented on, that he was very calm and he was very decided. So he says that he was already certain of what he wanted to do.
I love that, because you and I talked about it in our analysis. I think it was in I don't know if it was in Sex and Force Bonds or Why Their Story Isn't Over.
Sex and Force Bonds.
Okay.
The good stuff.
Right, the good one. We were talking about how, you know, a lot of people were thrown off by the fact that Kylo's face was so blank when Rey comes out of her Sleeping Beauty or Snow White coffin. You know, she comes out of the pod and she looks disappointed because he's just staring at her blankly and there are the handcuffs. But in a way, he had to keep contained and calm because he couldn't give it away to her. You know, she had to play her part and he had to pretend in front of Snoke. He had to be calm and in his center, you know, so that he could pull this off, because Snoke could see into him. So he really was entirely focused on what he had to do at that point. It was nice to get that confirmation that it's not that he doesn't care about her, it's that he had to be in the zone, right?
Yeah. I have Ryan's commentary about this. He says, my take was, Kylo comes into this moment knowing that Snoke can read his intentions, if not his mind. And so he can't be thinking actively about an opportunity. He's got to be in the moment here. And also, when they touch hands, it's the Force theme. And again, you know, we're talking about Skywalker Saga and the Force, what it means, you know, and their union means, you know, the future of the Skywalker Saga. And when they touch hands, is that the Force theme, and if you think about what it is, it gives you all the answers that you need to know about what their union and their connection means, I think.
Exactly. If you think about it, Kylo Ren was excluded from the positive side of the Force in a way, because in The Force Awakens, when you see him manipulating the Force, there's like an ominous theme that comes on, right?
Yeah.
And when the Force theme plays, it's the moment that the lightsaber comes to Rey, because in that moment, she is like the worthy wielder of it, right? But in The Last Jedi, when the Force theme plays, it's the moment that they're together joining hands. So in a way, she has brought him into that Force space where he's in the good side of the Force again. And now he's also a chosen one, because when it's time for the lightsaber to pick where it wants to go, it can't. You know, both of them have equal claim over it. Not one of them is right over the other in that moment. So that tells you a lot, the way that the saber just, you know, breaks apart because it can't decide. So it's the Force, you know, in a way has made them equals again. So it's really, really cool if you think about that aspect of it. The fact that that tells you that Kylo Ren is no longer like unworthy. He just has to sort himself out. Another thing that I think is really cool about The Last Jedi is that when Rey and Kylo Ren touched hands and the Force theme plays, that tells you that there's something really profound going on between them on a spiritual level. The fact that they see each other's futures when they touch hands, they're sharing a vision. I mean, that's very powerful with the Force theme playing in the background. Like you said, Denise, it's something that is going to be for the good, you know, of the galaxy. It's not something ominous. It's not something scary. It's something that will be a positive thing. So my sense is that they're actually both correct in what they saw. I don't think that Kylo Ren is wrong in what he saw. I don't think that Rey is wrong in what she saw. I think that they probably both saw exactly the same thing, and it's something that will end up happening. But because they were limited by their perceptions in the moment and their own hopes clouding, kind of muddying the picture, then they misinterpreted it and came away with what they wanted to see rather than the reality. So I think it's going to end up being the case that, you know, how Rey says to Kylo Ren, I saw your future, you'll turn. And he says to her, you're the one who's going to turn. When the time comes, you will stand beside me. I think they're both right. I think that Kylo Ren is going to turn against the First Order. And I think that Rey is going to turn. Not turn to the dark side, which is what people think he means, but that she's going to leave the resistance for him. If, as I suspect, and a lot of us have talked about this, actually Poe and the rest of the resistance, they find out about the Force connection between Rey and Kylo Ren, and they try to exploit that to harm, like to set a trap for Kylo, or if they try to get Rey to kill Ben Solo, she might decide, it's no longer the right thing to fight alongside with them, and she'll turn away from her old convictions and actually go to be with Kylo Ren, because that will be the right thing to do in that moment, in that context. And for me, that would be reflective of one of the core themes of Star Wars, which is what George Lucas has said that he intended to do, to speak to young people about the importance of having a sense of morality and doing what's right. And that doesn't mean attaching yourself blindly to an institution or to a religion or to whatever it is that you want to say, but rather, doing the right thing. So just because you're on the right side doesn't mean that everything you do is right. And that's a really key thing for kids to learn. So if the resistance are supposed to be the good guys, but they're telling you to not have compassion and kill the so-called bad guy, when you know that he's actually a person who is capable of being redeemed, turning against the good guys might actually end up being the right thing to do. And I think that Rey is going to follow her moral compass when the time comes, just like Luke followed his. That's what a true hero does. And I think it'll end up being that after seeing episode 9, when we look back on The Last Jedi, we'll realize that scene was actually foreshadowing the fact that Rey will turn and stand by Kylo when all is said and done. And he will do the same.
And I also think that, the fact that they were not together by the end of the second episode, for me, it was great. I knew some people said, oh, in the end, I want them to go out together. I was like, no! Because,
No.
if they, Han and Leia, they ended apart, right? In the second one. And at the end of the third one, they were together. Whereas, for example, Anakin and Padme ended together in the end of the second, and then they were apart in the end of the third.
It was a mess. But you know what? Like, we don't want another Amidala. We don't want Anakin and Padme's tragedy part 2 with better pickup lines. Like, what we want is for this romance to be done right. So if Rey had stayed with him and accepted his offer to rule the galaxy together, she would just be replaying Padme's role again, enabling him, turning a blind eye, thinking, oh, he's gonna change, so I'll just stay with him. Like, no, she shouldn't have stayed with Anakin after he massacred those people. And she did. She should have, called 911. He needed counseling and he needed consequences, but she just kind of enabled and covered for him. So Rey had to reject him in that moment, and it was very sad to see, because he's reaching out. The fact that he said please, a lot went into that, and it's important to her. The way that she gasps, she's like teary-eyed, and when he says please, she actually kind of flinches, like, oh my god, he's such a polite boy. And she loved that. But it really tears her apart to say no to him, but she has to. There's nothing else that she can do. So of course they had to end separately. I have still some complaints about how things played out after she left him, because I didn't like how she was like, yeah, I'm gonna blow stuff up now, I'm so happy, I don't have a care in the world. I didn't like that, because it just makes her seem kind of superficial. And I know they're saying, oh, she's so messed up, she has trouble with intimacy because she was alone in Jakku. Whatever, it's still a movie. We don't need a psychology class. We could have seen her looking a little down. I'm not happy about how that played out, but still, I understand exactly why she said no to him, and that's a necessary element for their story to progress in the right way.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in terms of plot, you have at this point the low point, right? And from that, it should reverse. So however it ends now, at the end of the next one, it's going to be the opposite. So the resistance is in shambles. It pretty much doesn't exist anymore. It's the low point. And they being apart is the low point. So, because the high point, the good point, should be them being together. I've seen some people who still doubt Reylo, thinking that it was her, what is it? A moment of weakness, a moment of
temptation.
Temptation, because you have that in the hero's journey. But then you would need to think, what is temptation deviating her from what? It doesn't, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't fit. What is her arc then? And you have to remember that this is the story of the Skywalker. So this is Kylo's story through her point of view, maybe, but it's his story. So she has to fit in his story if she's the protagonist here. So it's not not just a passing temptation.
I agree. I think the Last Jedi portrayed that Reylo dynamic in a very elegant way, in a very nuanced way. There's elements there that if you go into the analysis, like even her, after their amazing teaming up effort and their consummation, right, with the Praetorian Guard fight, how he throws the weapons down and the way he looks at her, it's like, I'm just gonna go grab you and I'm gonna kiss you. And after that, who knows what can happen. And Rey's like, oh my God, he's coming. He's gonna kiss me. So then he's like, oh my God, the resistance, and she runs away from him. There's another element there that's playing. It's not just that she can't stay with him because he's not good enough yet, but also she's not ready to come together with him in that way either. So she still has a lot of growing up to do, and he has a lot of growing up to do. So the story is not done. We just need to see more developing between them as individuals and as a couple.
Yeah. And let's remember that she ends looking at the broken pieces of the Skywalker Saber and she's holding to those pieces that are broken, and how that is symbolic. I know I've said this before if you've heard me, but it's very important. So the lineage, the Skywalker lineage is broken. If you think that as the legacy saber, as if you think of Rey and Kylo or as Kylo, but she's holding to it. She has the Skywalker legacy in her hands, and that's how the movie, if you forget the other part, that's how the movie ends, right? You go home, turn off.
And the other thing is, this is something that keeps coming up with the whole we have all we need. Kylo Ren encounters Rey in Takodana and he just swoops her and carries her away and he says, we have all we need, like in his arms, right? He has all he needs. And that's like a bunch of 80s, love songs are like that. She's going to help Kylo. He's going to have to do it himself. Like he has to fix himself, but she can help him by loving him, by, setting limits with him, not enabling him like Padme did. She can help him, but also by bringing in his children, bringing them into the world and continuing the line in that way. And maybe even through their work together in the Force, maybe literally restoring the Jedi Order, the temple that has collapsed. So there's a lot of really nice symbolism there as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's really nice. I just have two things from the director's commentary that I wanted to talk about is on Finn and Rey, because some people actually thought, some people watched The Last Jedi, and I really love Finn and Rey. I think their relationship is really cool. But Rian Johnson says, I always knew in my head the movie had to end with them finally coming together again, these two friends. So it's like, they're friends, guys. But that's just, actually, I love their relationship. I think it's really awesome, and I understand people who see it as romantic, but we have to remember that, this is the Skywalker saga, and Kylo is the Skywalker. There's one that's more important. It's about the closing door. She closes the door to him, and Rian says, I felt it was really important to put a little cap on this going to 9, and kind of setting up, and I want to see what happens next between the two of them. So those are his words. It's a little cap, guys. It's not a seal. It's not a door closed forever. It's a little cap, and that makes people excited to see what happens between these two. And these are Rian Johnson's words and his intentions. And remember again that we had JJ as the producer for this movie, and that he collaborated with. It's not that he helped write it, but that they're working closely together to keep key relationships, and the main points they were capped by Rian Johnson. So I think it's important.
Yeah, I think a lot of people latched onto that thing about, she severed the connection between them. It appears in the novelization.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, she's done with him. She dumped his ass. Well, the way I look at it, and other people have said this as well, it's more like, she's making him sleep on the couch. It's like you have a fight with your boyfriend, or you maybe even temporarily break up. You block him on your social media, and you're like, I'm not taking your calls. But eventually you're going to talk it out because there's still that thing between you, right? So it's the same thing. It's a temporary separation. She told him clearly by shutting the door in his face, not like this. Like, I can't accept you like this. Obviously, she cares about him. He cares about her, but he's going to have to change himself and work on himself. If you guys have heard me talking before, I love Britney Spears more than life itself. And I think Rey used Britney language to Kylo to communicate to him, you want to be with me? You better work, bitch. Like, you gotta work on this because I'm not gonna be with you like this. And that's good. That's gonna help him. Now he needs to think about his life and make some decisions and make some changes. When he's ready, he'll go to her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and let's remember the way he ends he ends the movie. He's on his knees crying, right? Looking at her like a, I don't know, like a lost
He
puppy.
looks so sad. And a viewer actually emailed us when we were still under the Star Wars connection, and they were saying, like, he's kneeling and there's light, but he's not in the light. I mean, yeah, but you can take that also as literally Rey is a ray of light, and she shut the door, so there's no light shining on him. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be redeemed. It doesn't mean that he's forever doomed, like people saying on our comment section, like, oh, because he's had so many opportunities to change his mind and he's still evil, so it means that he's done. No, I mean, we have an entire movie left for him to decide. You know what? I wanted power. I needed to be free from Snoke and do my own thing. I got to do it. I got to be Emperor, and now I'm ready to go to Rey.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, oh, by the way, you spoke of Rey. We forgot to mention how in The Force Awakens they talk about being seduced. What am I saying?
By the strength of your training, I will not be seduced.
No, but they say seduced by the light. He wants to resist the light, right? Because we have the seduction to the dark side, and now they do seduction by the light, and her name is Rey, right? Not subtle at all. So you have this character who wants to resist the seduction by the light, and then he meets the Rey light, right? I mean,
in Star Wars, when people say they're not going to be seduced, I mean, it doesn't work out for them. When like Leia's like, I would rather kiss a Wookiee, but she wants to kiss Han. Give me a break. I mean, it keeps playing out. It's a nice little callback. Also, Padme like, I'm not going to give in to this Anakin. And then 2 seconds later, you know, she's like kissing him and marrying him and having his baby. So yeah, it's not going to work out for Kylo Ren. He's already been seduced, sorry to say.
Oh yeah. And yeah, but the thing is that basically people say, oh, but why hasn't he changed his mind? Because it's a trilogy, right? If it had been a standalone movie, by the end of episode 7, he would come to her and said, you know what, I want to change. You know, you can't have it until it has to be in the end. And it's important that by now he's free to make his own decisions, but we also shouldn't be surprised that he can't make good decisions right away, you know, after, and JJ had in The Force Awakens that Snoke had been kind of poisoning his mind from an early age, and I think that's gonna be there again. And then they say, oh, but he killed Snoke, and why didn't he change? Because it doesn't really work like that as fast, right?
Yeah, and I think also from a storyline standpoint, like I said, for me, this trilogy is really about Kylo Ren as a central character along with Rey, like the two of them together. But certainly Kylo Ren is providing the main conflict here. So he is somebody who was on the path to becoming a villain, and now we're seeing him be deconstructed so that he can go back to being Ben Solo. So it's a reverse, you know, villain's arc. So it's very interesting, and that takes time. So if that's the key thing about the trilogy, then obviously that can't be resolved until we're in the final installment. So I'm not bothered by that. I was hoping that it wouldn't play out like that. And I certainly don't want it to be like the last 5 minutes that he finally is redeemed and starts fighting with the good guys. I want to see that happen early on so that we get more time with Ben Solo, but I don't have doubts at this point. I mean, we won't know until we're there watching the movie, but everything's pointing in that direction for sure. I'm
betting at something around the midpoint that things turn around and then turn around again. But then, yeah. But then if there's a midpoint and he turns around and he gets together with Rey, then at the end, it could kind of have a little twist again or something tragic. I'm not saying I want it. I'm just saying it's possible.
I think that a good kind of compromise for that is if Rey and Ben end up like teaming up, not as a romantic thing, but like having to work together somehow, and then over the course of that, you know, the romance thing develops. But like the teaming up can happen like halfway, you know, or even 1/3 in. So yeah, we're just speculating, but.
Yeah, but for sure they're gonna. Okay, this is the Skywalker, and this is a generational story. For a new generation to happen, we have to have babies, and so you know that's it. Unless they're gonna clone Luke's hand or something. That's gonna be so lame.
Maybe that's gonna be the Skywalker line. But I wanted to talk a little bit also about like in the aftermath of The Last Jedi. We've talked about like the director's commentary, but there has been so much that has come out pointing in a Reylo direction that even people that were before, you know, they were like, no way. Now they're like, oh my God, it's really going there. Official stuff, you know. You were talking about the chocolates, the Valentine's Day Reylo chocolates.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'll cross the galaxy for you. Who does she cross the galaxy for again?
That is adorable. And then of course we have like the little golden book, which I grew up like with little golden books. I think anybody who was born in like the late 80s, 90s knows what I'm talking about in the US. The little golden book version of The Last Jedi that shows Kylo looking like a prince. He looks like a prince. There's no way around it. And then talking about how Rey and Kylo started connecting through the Force and Rey started to think that she could save him, you know. Again, Reylo is being marketed to the little kid. And then of course you have funny stuff that's going on, like the MTV Movie Awards making fun of Rey being jealous of her flirting with Kylo. So there's things going on that are definitely making it more mainstream.
Oh,
Reylo has gone mainstream.
There's Adam Driver making Rey and Kylo dolls kiss.
I know. Oh my God. Anybody who still thinks that they're related after seeing that, please. I don't know if in your family that's something cousins and sisters and brothers do, but generally, no, that's not, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot, and also with Rian Johnson and stuff that he liked, and also the Star Wars, the main accounts like on Twitter, and you have it's just so much that at this point we don't, you know, like it's pervasive. It's hard to take. Oh, it's this evidence. It's all the time, and so it's pretty much Reylo. Yeah,
Reylo all the way for sure. I think we can expect this to kind of ramp up more as we get closer. Like maybe even Celebration, we might see more Reylo stuff coming out, you know, in the marketing. So I heard people saying like, oh my God, maybe they're going to kiss in the trailer. I don't know about that, but
no.
I think that we can expect more Reylo fabulousness going forward.
Yeah, and that trailer for The Last Jedi is also a very good reminder, right? Because the trailer presents the premise of the movie and the core of the movie, Rey and Kylo kind of like being compared together and being paralleled, and it ends with them, you know, with him stretching out his hand for her. So that was something else that was important.
And for everyone that's like still worried, I mean, the fact that J.J. Abrams is gonna write and direct Episode 9 is something that all Reylos and fans of Kylo Ren should take comfort in. Kylo Ren is, as far as Star Wars characters go, he's the most nuanced, the most complex, I think, of characters that we've seen on film. So, and that's not a coincidence. That was JJ's work. And he loves the character, obviously. And I don't think that he's gonna do wrong by him. I think that he's gonna, whatever happens, it's gonna do the character justice, I hope. And JJ is so good at romance, it's not even funny. Like, that's his thing. How complicated it is and how satisfying. That's something he's really good at portraying. So I'm more confident than ever. I can't tell you how relieved I am that it's not gonna be Colin Trevorrow and that it's gonna be JJ. So I think we can be very optimistic.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good, strong romance, and it's gonna be another, I was gonna say another great romance for the Skywalker saga, but the prequels doesn't really count. But we're gonna have one more other than Han and Leia. We're gonna have a strong romance, because if you think about it, every trilogy has, you know, a big romance, and that's another reason why it's gonna happen, because, you know, there is no other great romance with the sequel trilogy. So they're the romance of the sequel trilogy. And Star Wars is fairy tale in space. It's not hard sci-fi, guys. I don't know who started saying, oh no, Star Wars doesn't have, they must be confusing with some other kind of series, you know. This is not hard sci-fi. This is space opera, and romance is very important for it.
Yeah, and you know how some men who comment on our comment section accuse us of trying to make the sequel trilogy be like Twilight in space, but you know, when they say that, it's just code for, you know, you women are trying to make this into a cheesy, corny story that's intended for women only. But you know what? The person who said that Star Wars is a space fairy tale is actually the maker, George Lucas. It's always meant to be a fairy tale. And fairy tales aren't just for women. They're not just for kids. They are for all of us, you know, to remember that qualities like goodness, kindness, faith, hope, you know, can be rewarded no matter how bad things can seem. So it inspires people to remain hopeful and to be good to each other. I mean, that's what it is. That's Star Wars for you. So think about that. It's always been a fairy tale in space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's space fairy tale actually, because it's more like space fantasy actually, and fairy tale, you're right. Okay, so this was it for today. Thank you very much for listening. We love to read your comments, your suggestions, your questions, so leave a comment. You can also email us. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. We're also on Twitter and on Tumblr, and you can also hear everything and download everything on SoundCloud. So don't forget to subscribe, and may the Force serve you well.